And we've hit the button and we are live now. Welcome, everybody. It's 2021. And I'm here, like in the best way, with Alysa Rushton. And we're going to do things a little bit differently. I am going to be the featured guest, but it's going to be more of a collab. But we just want to welcome you to the Theta Power Hour, the first one of 2021. And what we do is we interview, we hear what's up, and then we do some work, Theta Healing work, right? So we're going to be talking about Theta Healing because it's been a while since I've, really have delved into it, but we're going to do a lot of other things too that are going to be fun. So Alysa, I don't have your bio on me, so tell people about you a little bit.
Well, first, before we tell people about me, Brenda, can we just say, hey guys, how are you? By the way, like this video, share this video. We're going to be doing an awesome interview with Brenda and I. We're both Theta healers, although I consider Brenda the master of the two of us. And that's one of the reasons why I'm interviewing her today, because, Brenda has so much knowledge and so much wisdom about how you can quickly tweak things and change things within yourself so that you can have a different experience. So I'm just curious to know how many of you guys right now or on the replay live want a different experience in 2021. Just curious, want to know. So having said all that, Brenda, thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you for reminding me. I get caught up and it's I didn't do one last week and I'm out of my groove here. And it's yes. So this, tag people. You want to get some information and some good juicy tidbits on 2021 and what's to come and what's possible. Tag, share, tell us, do you want 2021 to be different than 2020?
Yeah, and if so, how so? What are you really inviting in to be different for yourself? I would love to know. So guys who are watching live, tell us who you are and tell us what it is that you really want to shift for yourself. Now, I will tell you this, and Brenda, we're going to talk about this. I'm going to ask you questions, but I'm going to tell on Bren a little bit. Because Brenda's a master at helping you create more abundance and attract more money. And really, one of the things I feel about you, Brenda, can I say?
Absolutely.
All right, is that so Brenda's genius is really helping you go in and tweak that little niggle, that piece that's been actually holding you back that you don't even probably know about. It's that thing that you've been doing all the right things right, and still it's like the thermostat keeps getting set back to 72 no matter what you do. And so that's Brenda's genius. She can pick it out right away. And so we're going to do some work on that today. So whether you're watching now live or on the replay now, you can just set your energy to get some help and support, because we really do want you to have a different experience this year. And we also know that there's going to be some things happening this year that are going to be somewhat of a catalyst for you to have a different experience. So with all that said,
and I think, and this is the thing too, right? So what Alyssa's talking about, and we're talking about let's be present. We're talking about 2021. And this is what I've always wanted for people. It's just so happened that 2020 really stirred things up for people and allowed people to have awarenesses. So whether it stirred it up or not, people just had awarenesses.
yeah. And I also felt, Brenda, it was kind of the year where it brought up people's shadow stuff so that they could actually look at it for real and deal with it. So yeah, so now that people know what's really going on, they can kind of look and go, oh, now what? Now what? Yeah.
And I think in even more so than what people were aware of is, I think what also happened for people as well is that they went, wait a minute, I thought I dealt with that.
Right. And there is no such, can we just pause right here and say, there's no such thing as saying, I thought I dealt with that. It's the universe goes in a spiral for a reason. And so the universe would never be like, wait, I thought we dealt with the sun rising already. Didn't we already deal with that?
It happened again? Right.
Yeah, exactly. So when we get these layers or residues, people often beat themselves up, but it's nothing to beat yourself up for. It's just a layer or a residue. And then you can decide to transform it and work on it at a different level. Like we can work at money at the poverty level, or we can work at money. You know me, I like to work at the money at the 6 and 7 figure business level. That's my sweet spot. There's some coaches that work at the 8, figure business level. I don't work there. There are some coaches that do. I don't have experience yet in that realm, but I do have a lot of experience in the 6 and 7 figure business realm. So back to what we're here doing today is I'm here just to interview you and really do some work. Let's get down to it, shall we?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
we're ready.
And we're ready, guys. So pop us a comment and let us know that you're here. Let us know that you're working it. And Brenda, okay, so I don't have your bio either. What I will tell you about Brenda is she's a master theta healer. She is a master at helping you break through the limitations really very quickly that you've been subconsciously running, the programs that you've been subconsciously doing, both on your mind level and your energy body level and at a cellular level. Brenda actually goes in and helps you swoop those up and transform them and clear them. It's a painless process. People actually spend years in therapy or years doing all this other sort of work, and the work that Brenda does with Theta Healing, and that I've loved Theta Healing for years, for this very reason, because you can go in and transform something rather instantly, so much so, and I know this is true because I've heard it from your clients, that they don't even really remember that it was an issue for them after you guys deal with it. Is that right?
Absolutely. That's so true. I always kiddingly say that if you want to be confirmed and validated for what you do for a living, don't become a theta healer, because your clients is as if it's always been. So this time and energy and headspace that they've spent on not doing that or doing it differently or not feeling a certain way, it goes away. And what's really cool is that it opens up space for what you do want.
Exactly. Exactly. And I sort of have a more woo, me, I'm a little more woo woo than you. You're more, I mean, I am pretty practical woo woo, but I am still woo woo. And what I feel like the work that you do allows people to do is what I would call a timeline jump. So maybe you've been struggling with something all your life. And then literally after you get done with the session, you don't feel like that was you anymore because you've cleared out all the past energy, shikaki, kerjunkus, whatever you want to call it. It's
Love
like
those
you
words.
you cleared that out and you then rewound this newness on back. So for those of you who get quantum theory, you get string theory, you can understand how that works because there's no such thing as time. And there's a lot of science around this technique, theta healing. So literally what you're doing is you're going in on the subatomic particle level and you are clearing up this old shikaki and rewriting it in a different story stream so that your now self can have a vastly different experience. That's how I'd explain what you do. Brenda, I love to hear how you explain it.
It sounded so good. I was just like, tell me more. She sounds great. Who is she? No, I'm just kidding. I know she's talking about me. But what I feel like it happens, right, is that what people don't realize is that you've packed these little bags and you've carried them with you. And it's all of these traumas and non-forgiveness and hurt and rejection and abandonment and everything else. And of course, you brought some of that with you to begin with. So the bags were already packed. And then they keep getting filled. And people just don't realize that life on an everyday, timeline is really manageable. Nothing is a big deal. We can, we just move along and we strum. But what happens for most of us is that something happens and then we have these bags that all of that emotion, all of that feeling is packed in it. And it's overwhelming and it's upsetting and we react. And typically when people react, they make poor choices and then they get to stay in that story. And so, but when dealing and just like in this hour, like in this moment, it's not that bad. And people have said, like in certain ways of certain things happening, like I am, people have said that you're like one of the happiest people during the pandemic. And it's like because I'm happy with me. right? And I'm happy with, my animals that, I have a puppy and I have a cat and we're just good. And yes, I do, miss the social aspect of my life, but you can still get it. I keep hearing what, people are all like saying like, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. Is it that different on January 6th? It's not for most people unless they just did some really big clearing. Like we had a great reset and clearing in my Facebook group called the Wealth Vibe Acceleration. And we're still hearing about it because people are just like, wow, that was profound. I felt it was profound for me. Luckily, it was me and three other, my three facilitators that I have in my program. So I got to, it was, I'll admit it, it was selfish reasons to have it, because I love to have work done on me as well, right? Like everybody else. So it's just really great. And so people were like, wow, y'all covered like the whole spectrum. And it's just really lovely to be able to have that. It happens instantaneously. You get to be different. And what's really fun, Alyssa, is that most people don't notice it,
Right. They
but
don't.
everybody else in their lives do. And for women, typically it's like, did you change your skincare routine? Did you change your hair? Did you, and usually their significant other is like, what's her booking information? Because if that can happen for you, I want some of that. And I always say, people always come to me because their significant other, they want them to come see me. I'll just say that. And then I'm like, the world's our mirror. And
Mm,
that's what we really do is we change the reflection very quickly, like instantaneously.
right.
If you're showing up, if you're willing, right? Like it does, we don't have to open up a wound and pour salt in it. It's just like what challenges you. You got to be real. If people show up juicy, we get a lot done. People
Mm,
kind of show up like, well, and I think a lot of it too is that people don't realize that they can ask for more than what they do.
amen. So, can we talk about this? Okay. What do you feel like when it comes to abundance and when it comes to really having the lives that we want? What do you feel is that really common thread that you see for most people? Or do you see a common thread?
Absolutely.
What is
Absolutely.
it?
And it's the reason that I created my intro session that I offer to people, because I've done this for 14 years and there was just a point where I just felt like people wanted to pay me for me to show up, to come for a session. They want to talk about one thing. And I could do so much more for them, which is why I created it. But I don't know if people understand. And sometimes I have people like they come into the session and I'll say, is that on your trauma list? Like, that's a trauma. Most of us are so anesthetized as to what is a big deal because we've just carried it for so long. And I find that it's traumas, and
Mhm.
traumas are relative. So it could be something like your mom being 5 minutes late picking you up from preschool, to actually being, participating in an act of war or a car, having a car accident, something like that. Again, there's a whole spectrum. It doesn't matter. It's who you are as a human being. If it traumatized you, if you're still thinking about it,
Mhm.
it traumatized you. If it
That's
comes up, it's a trauma.
Yeah, if you're still replaying it, if it's still something happens and you go to that moment or that feeling of that moment is triggered within you, that's such a great indicator. So traumas, what are some common traumas that you think happen to people, especially around money and having abundance? What do you notice anything particularly there?
It's not specific traumas.
Okay. So it
It's
could be
that people have trauma. It's like, we have a trauma and we get hurt at a very deep level. And then we operate in our lives and in our businesses from that place, from that wounded, traumatized, you know, typically, young child place.
yeah.
And then that's what causes reaction. That's what causes poor choices. That's what causes you magnetizing. Because what happens with trauma is that you have what we call free floating memories, and they act like as magnets. So it feels almost like, yes, I am opening that wound and pouring salt in. I am having that same reaction and feeling that exact same way. As human beings, this is just what happens. But then also, too, we project. So it may not even sound, look, feel like that, but we're going to make it that because we have that in our cells. We have it in our DNA. And that's what theta healing does is it removes it. So it's not like I lost a business, right? Again, that's a trauma, yes. And yes, that'll affect how you look at money, but it can be that my mom was 5 minutes late picking me up from preschool, can affect your money and how you attract and your abundance and your prosperity, just like something that looks like it really, or my identity was stolen and they took all this money out of my account. Yeah, these types of things, yes. Or my dad lost his job when I was a kid and we had to go on welfare. Yes, these things will affect you. Yes, I don't want to discount them at all, but it's everything. It's all of your trauma that causes it. And I think that that's where people get stuck, Alyssa, is because like I'll have people, we have the Wealth Vibe Acceleration group, my Facebook group. Please come join if you'd like. We do a lot of cool healing and things. But the thing is that people show up and it's like, okay, I want to talk about money. And I think they kind of go, and I'm like, oh no, we can change that and we don't even have to talk about it.
Right. Well,
And it's not.
and here's something interesting too, that what I think most people don't understand about money is so much of our world impacts our money. For example, relationships, our health, how we, wake up and go to bed, how we do our daily lives. And so, people are often so focused on the money, but I don't know about you, but a lot of times I find that it's sometimes not at all about the money. What do you find for people mostly when it comes to like increasing their overall wealth vibe?
Well, and the next thing that people always come and talk about, right? If they don't want to talk about money, then they want to talk about their self-worth.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, that is a symptom. Again, self-worth is a symptom typically of trauma and many other things. We'll get there, right? But they don't realize that that's like affected what they can draw in, what they feel like that they deserve. And that, those are the two main things that end up going on. And I'm like, and again, that's what's out there as well. I feel like I'm a little bit of a disruptor because I'm going to say, and that's what everybody says, and that's not true, right?
Yeah.
What we have found. And again, we're looking at, and I feel like that's also what 2020 was about, Alyssa, was we're looking at, do you want to accept the old school, long, hard way of doing things? The old energy healing things, or do you want to step into the new? Because again, I know Alyssa can talk about this so much more. I just kind of go, something's going on with the planet. I always know, but it's like really, I think that people thought that 2020 was so hard in some ways and felt so emotional because of the pandemic and the quarantine. And I got to tell you, man, were we completely supported by the planets for it to, roll out like that?
Yeah, in fact, I call it the 3 Ds of the pummeling. Like, I don't know many people personally that didn't have a death, a divorce, or some sort of like disease or disaster in 2020. That was sort of the mass, and that was what was supposed to happen. But to your point, there is a really old energy way of doing things, and it's from 2,000 years ago, and it's based in very old Newtonian science, which is cause and effect. And you've got to go back to the cause to change the effect. And while it's true that Newtonian science is a real thing, we also have this whole other layer of modern day quantum physics science that is sort of an underlayment of how everything else works. So it's a beautiful thing when you understand that you can work with energy, you guys, in such a different way. You don't have to open the wound and go back and touch it and do all that stuff. You don't have to do, years worth of work or even, days worth of work. You can actually go in and heal these traumas on a very instantaneous level. And really, what I feel like Brenda does too is helps you learn to work with your own energy system so that you can start to identify some of these things and then start to work with the process. And so, Brenna, I would love to hear from this last year of 2020. Do you have like an awesome client success story or an awesome client story that you want to share about how quickly you can transform these little glitchy traumas? Do you have something that kind of pops to your mind?
Going, every client is a great testimonial, right? Because it will just start to happen instantaneously. And one of my favorite stories to tell, right, is back when we were meeting people. I had a gal who had a session, my intro session with me, and I ran into her at a meeting, at a networking meeting, and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And she was like, "Yeah, I don't think that session did anything for me." I said, "Okay, how's it going?" Right? Because again, that's her reality. I know what I see when I work with somebody, and not to discount or anything. I didn't want to discount it. I was just like, "So what's new?" I mean, that's unfortunate. And so she was just like, and then she just started listing like all the new things in her life: new man, new dog, a new place to live, doing a vocal performance. And the thing is, I always tell people you have complete anonymity when you do a session with me, because I just don't recall it. And I do so many sessions that I don't recall them. And it doesn't mean that it wasn't profound or anything like that. It's just, I get to work in that profoundness like every day. So it's like, it's not that it's not good, bad, or different. And then when she was like, she did a performance, I was like, all of a sudden I was like, could have sworn we worked on performance anxiety or stage fright. I can't, whatever you want to call it. And I was just like, okay, again, all I care about is that you have a good life. Whether or not it attributes to having a session with me, and she just looked at me. And after she said that, I just looked at her and went, "Wow, that sounds like amazing. I'm so happy for you." And she went, "Oh, I guess it did work." Okay. Maybe yes, maybe no. But isn't that, to me, that's like the cool thing. Like, you can have all this great events and everything happening. I mean, like, this was a woman who hadn't dated for 10 years. This was a woman who had always wanted a dog in her adult life and didn't have it, and we're talking 30 days later, I run into her.
Goes back to your point about how it does go back and rework the past energy stream. So she really probably in her conscious mind didn't think that anything had changed because
Because it
in
was
her,
so effortless,
yeah, because in her now energy, that's who she was. And that's what I love about theta healing is it really does change things on the quantum level, on the cellular genetic level. And that's a thing I don't think people really understand about healing and our bodies. Can I just geek out on this for a second? Do you mind? Because
Oh my gosh. Okay, so gather round, everybody. Tag and invite people on this. Watch the replay, listen closely, because really, I wish I could have like a list of like, here, let me play this recording on what she said about this, because she explains things so well. So get ready.
So your cells and your DNA within your cells imprints every time there's an important event. But what people know that, like, that's like, okay, yes, my DNA imprints. But you might not also know that your DNA, and we've proven this with modern science, the science of epigenetics, at least 7 generations back. And by the way, that's all that our equipment has the ability to monitor. But like all science, it gets better and better and better. Like a microscope, at first we can only measure so much, and then we get better microscopes, and we're like, wow, look, there's a subatomic particle. So right now we know that you imprinted 7 generations back. So when you came into this world, you had the genetic traumatic imprints of 7 generations of your grandma and grandpa on your mom's side and your dad's side. So when you look at that, anybody who's had more than 2 kids can get this. You get one baby who comes in and they're just like, just this happy personality. And then you get the other baby who comes in that had a different set of genetic imprints that took in a different way and their own personality and their own soul's path and they're pissed at the world and they're screaming and crying from day one. And so all of that leads into your soul and what you're genetically imprinting in that actual DNA and how it repeats and plays out. And so what we don't necessarily get yet in the healing modalities, but Theta Healing does get, and that's why I love people working with someone like Brenda, is because you have to go in and clear that stuff out. If you don't address it at the actual DNA level, the genetic level, and then which radiates out into your energetic body, you will continuously, it's like having the repeat performance again and again, just on
Like Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day all over again. Exactly. And it's all designed by you and your soul to get a clearing. It's like your soul's going, well, I hope she understands that we need to clean this situation up for the 15th time. And it's just something that happens so that we can do the clearing. And by the way, you are here in this lifetime to do the cleanup work. This is why you're having this lifetime. I truly believe. What do you think, Brenda? Do you think this lifetime is like the lifetime where you can be super conscious and clean it up so that we don't have to drag all this unconscious data forward? What are your thoughts about that?
I agree with that. And I also agree, again, if we're going out a little bit too far for you or whatever, just know that this is going to affect you no matter what. It'll show up in your day-to-day life. It'll show up in your day-to-day business. And this is why we look at these things. And that's why you don't have to worry about it. But it's nice to have that awareness. But
Yeah.
absolutely, I feel like that people, because this is the thing that I would say, like, what's the big indicator is because kids are so different now. And they're so aware and they talk about different things.
They know how
And
to work an iPad when they're 1 year old. How do you know how to do that unless you didn't get somebody's DNA going, boop, here's how you do it.
absolutely. And they just know, like, we were all like that, but we weren't given permission to be like that. And now we are. And I believe that it is so that, those of us who are, older than 10, right, are having these things so we can catch up to them. I love it, like when I do groups or when I'm working and they bring their baby, I'm like, okay, well, let's just learn the secrets of the world from them.
Yeah,
What can they
exactly.
teach us? Because that's what's going on. And that's why you want to clear it, because this is the thing. You have to look at things. That's why I love to talk about the definition of insanity.
Yes.
It's repeating that same behavior and expecting a different outcome. And it may not look exactly the same,
Right.
right? But it's the same. If you're
Right.
feeling the same, it's the same.
Yeah.
And that's what ends up, and what I find, and what is really like one of my big whys, is that I just want people to have more mercy on themselves,
Mm,
with themselves, because I always say, you come by it honestly, right? We've inherited it. We are tuned in, whether you want to be or not, in the mass consciousness, and we bring it into us here. We continue it, so we can go out there. This is what's going on, and that's why a lot of things seem to take longer, or don't seem to be permanent, or don't seem to work, because we're not just dealing with what happened when you were 3 in this lifetime.
right.
We're
Yeah.
dealing what happened with your grandparents, your great grandparents, their great grandparents. It goes, and we're also dealing with, like, what did I come into this lifetime to learn, right? And can we be done with the lesson, that it's can be
Mhm.
stop being painful, and get it?
Yeah.
Because the thing is that that's the saying: what we resist persists. And I think that that's a big thing that happened in 2020, is that there was nowhere to run.
Right. Two things. Elaine says yes to imprinting 7 generations back. Amazing. And, here's the thing I want people to really hear is you can learn lessons on different levels. So one of the things I think that's beautiful about Theta Healing is, you're not going to necessarily escape the lesson that you need to learn, that you came here to learn. However, you can choose how you want to go about that lesson learning. For example, somebody who's learning to have a healthier body, one way to learn that lesson is to get super sick and almost die, or maybe die, come back, and then have to go through the slog of learning it the hard way. Yet another person might go, somebody in my family got super sick and I want to avoid that. And so, what can I do now to be proactive in order to change my experience on the front end? So, this is what I actually love about your work, Brenda, is you guys, if you know something's already in your DNA, if you know, like, oh, my dad's got this, or my mom's got this pattern with relationships, pattern with money, pattern with health, because some of these DNA things don't actually flick on until you're 47 or until you're, 28 or until you're 75. Like, they're actually genetically encoded to start and turn on at a certain time. And so you can be proactive. And I think if 2020 has taught me anything, it's that you can actually see something coming and work with that energy, or transform yourself, transmute yourself, and upgrade yourself so that you don't have to get smacked by the wave. So I don't know how many surfers we have, but I spend a lot of time in the ocean because I live in Hawaii sometimes. And then in the ocean, a big wave's coming, and if you're a surfer or a paddleboarder, if you're in the right spot for that wave, it's magic time. It's like riding that wave and you feel amazing. But if you're in the wrong spot, if you're on the shore and that wave is breaking, you can actually break your neck. And so that's the thing about Brenda's work, is that when you feel these energy waves coming, or you can sense that something's heading down the pike, oh my gracious, Brenda, can we just say, what happens when you see people be proactive with getting the work done and the theta healing, like an intro session or doing a longer program with you? What happens when you see somebody be proactive with it versus when they've waited for the wave to crash down upon them?
Right. Opportunities come to, it's like, oh my God, how do I even say this? We're so used to, like, I've got to do this. I'm going to do this. I have to make this happen. I have to hold this. And all of a sudden they're creating in different ways. They're finding their creativity in different ways. It's presenting to them. But what also happens is that it's applied to every area of their life. So it's not like all of a sudden they become like a fine artist or something like that. Maybe not. But it's also that creativity goes to every way. And they have thoughts, right? Like, I want this. Instead of thinking about, don't do this, I don't want, they have these thoughts. I want this. This is what I want in my life. This is how I want it to be. And then all of a sudden these opportunities present themselves.
Yeah, and they're
That's what they
active.
were thinking. And
They're
they didn't have
active.
to do anything else.
Yeah. And they're activated to actually see the opportunities. Because, guys, that's really important that you know that you are living in a world of infinite potential. And because our sight, our actual sight, eyeballs, our reticular activating system that goes from your eye retina into your brain, it's called your RAS system. It literally only holds so much data at once unless you open up the doors for it. So that's part of what Brenda does, is helps you open up the doors for the new opportunities that have actually always been there for you to see and explore in just different ways. And here's an example of that. If you've ever wanted to get a new pair of shoes or buy a new car, and once you activate for that want and desire, all of a sudden, where maybe you didn't see that white BMW X5 everywhere, now all of a sudden you can't drive down the street without seeing 5 of them. That's your RAS system opening up and going, oh, look at all these cars, look at all the Beamers out here. But the same thing is, if you start to activate in a really positive way through this work, with relationships, with job possibilities and potentials, you don't actually have to, and here's my thing about your work, is you don't have to slog it out
Right.
in the 3D time scale. For
Absolutely.
example, for example, I've got a little bit of a story of a theta healing story. So somebody was going for a new job, and they were going to go for a director level job, and there was some theta healing work that they did, and all of a sudden, okay, they went from a director to a chief marketing officer. It's a huge, gigantic. It's a gigantic leap that would have probably taken at least 5 years in the 3D time scale construct to work out, if not 10. But because of this theta healing work that you do, she was able to just like jump the shark, if you will, jump the time scale and not even deal with it. And all of a sudden, she got a huge promotion with a different company, right? She got laid off, but that's when she started getting the work. She got laid off and she started getting the work. And then it was like, oh, wait a second, we don't have to be in the 3D time. And then the next thing you know, she's a chief marketing officer and she's even going, wow, this is amazing. But it's because of that theta healing work and specifically dealing with the traumas.
It's dealing with the traumas and it's also dealing with the non-forgiveness.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Talk to me about the non forgiveness.
Because
This for her was huge. It's the reason why she actually got the CMO job.
absolutely, we make mistakes. This is the deal. People make mistakes with us. Things
Mhm.
happen. Um, what was your life growing up, right? Like, what was your childhood like? I'm going to tell you right now, if you had some resentment or had some things happen and you weren't happy with your parents for whatever reason, no judgment. I promise you, you're going to have those exact same things with whoever is your divine power.
Yeah.
Because as children, we make our parents our gods. We just
Yeah.
do. And so we just project that. Like I don't I always see this a lot with people. They make their bosses their parents, they make their teachers their parents. It's like we just do this, right? And we're all making this authority type thing, and it really messes with people. But then we make, like I said, we live in a life of reaction, most people, and then we make poor choices because we weren't like being solid in it. We weren't in our knowing with it, and we did it out of fear or, whatever was the motivator, that which wasn't something positive. It's like most people don't understand that's not where you want to be to make a decision, but it's
Mhm.
where most people are when they make a decision, right? They're in the lack, they're in the fear, they're in the, the victimization. Like people don't even understand how much they're victimized because again, it's not just about you. It's what you've brought into this life. So it's what you've inherited. It's what group consciousness affects you. It's mass consciousness and how it affects you. So in that forgiveness, so you make a mistake
Mhm.
and then you make it again in a different way.
Mhm.
And then it causes you to not do it, or you attract that same person and they're not doing anything, but you react in certain ways because you haven't forgiven yourself and the other person that you were with previously to be able to be different in that relationship, or to be able to be in that job differently and know like these are my gifts and people will pay me a lot of money for it, that type of thing. But with the non-forgiveness, what it does, again, it's a magnet
Yeah.
attracting what you haven't forgiven. So here it
But
goes. Here, I'm going to keep coming at you until you're willing to do it differently.
But here's the secret is if you don't do the non-forgiveness work, two things will happen. One, it's hard to even see this other opportunity that's the better of the two, that your preference would actually choose the experience of. You're going to naturally gravitate. Your energetics, your energy is going to get naturally pulled to the one that, if you haven't done the forgiveness work, is going to suck you back and loop you right back into that situation, which is filled with red flags. And you already know it's going to be awful. But because you haven't done the work, it's almost like a secret barrier that acts like a plexiglass to just kind of bounce you,
Mhm.
yeah, and keep you right where you are. So this forgiveness work, but here is such a key. But here's the thing: there is a process to this forgiveness work, and there is a real technique in order to do it. And a lot of people don't understand the process of forgiveness work, so they think they've actually done it. Or here's what I get a lot, and I'm curious to know if you get it. I'll hear usually the forgiveness, sometimes it's about yourself, but sometimes it's about the other person and the other circumstances. And usually I'll hear, why the F do I have to forgive them?
Right.
And
Forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for you. When you have non-forgiveness for another person, it holds you prisoner of that.
right?
And so all the time, that's why I say people will look at me and go, no, I don't want to forgive them. No, I don't want to do that. And I'd be like, okay, again, I'll say that forgiveness is not for them because I promise you, they're fine. They've gone on with their life. They haven't thought twice about it, but you're holding on to it. And it is, I can't even tell you, it's attracting the things that you don't want. It's taking up space in your energy field, your mind, your body. It's repelling
Yeah,
opportunities
yeah.
and it's just repelling your happiness.
Right. And running stress like an underlayment of stress. And I know you've heard this a lot in your work, but like people will tell you, I'm not feeling anxiety anymore, or I'm not feeling like all these like feelings of this old burdensome feelings that I felt before. So, Brenda, can we just talk for a second about your groups that you have? Because I think this is one of the most remarkable ways to engage with Brenda. If you haven't done so already, you guys, is to dive into your groups because you do active theta healing work in your group. So, can you tell us a little bit about your Wealth 5 Acceleration group and what that is and what you're doing with folks in there?
Well, the Wealth Vibe Acceleration, I'm like, yes, please. I would love to talk about that. It's just an amazing place because people come together. It's a community. We have people that interact. And honestly, I kiddingly say theta healing is a little bit like cocaine. You get a little taste and you want more because it's like, oh my God, that was easy. Or, oh my God, that changed. Or, like, is that all it takes? Right. And so people will show up and every day we offer some type of support, like Monday through Thursday. And again, always can catch replays like this
Mhm.
and be able to have some work done by simply saying yes out loud. That's it.
Yeah.
There's the big requirement.
One of the things I love about your group is that not only do you do theta healing, but you also do other frequency work. And I mean, I think that frequency comes through in many different forms, right? Like this, Elaine says, data in eyes speaks volume to me. So I think what Elaine's saying is she's actually seeing data coming through our eyeballs, right? And that's the thing is you are literally guys getting a transmission of energy no matter what it is that you're watching or listening to. And so one of the things you really want to be thinking about this year as you're up-leveling your experiences, what are those things that you're tuning into that you can actually feel either numb you out or drain your energy or leave you feeling not in the place you want to feel. When you're listening to something, you want to feel that lightness of heart. You want to feel that fluffy sort of expansion feeling. You want to feel lighter than you did. You don't want to feel that like thud.
Right.
And that's something that you want to attend to. But that's what I love about your groups is that you're getting work from both yourself, you're getting, you bring in other amazing theta healers. You do the Healy, the frequency work. I'm a big Healy fan. You know, I use that a lot in my business too with everything I do because I don't feel like at this point in time, I feel like we need all the help we can get.
Right. Right. All hands on deck. All hands on deck. Absolutely. And and that's the thing too, is that I have people say over and over again, and there's no mistakes like, oh my God, that was the perfect thing I needed. That was perfect. Or that's what I was, it just is. And when you can, not to make it sound so out there, but that's what people say. I feel lighter. I feel like the weight's been lifted off my shoulders. My head feels empty. I feel fuzzy or I feel neutral. Like we don't really understand how neutrality feels. Like
Right.
all of these Eastern philosophies that you've read about that you're like, well, that sounds like a nice experience. You can have it in this Western world, so to speak. We can have it now. And it's not so out there. I mean, I will kiddingly say, I have like male clients all the time would say, and I'm in Texas, right? I don't know what the hell you do, but it works,
Yeah.
right? Because they can quantitatively measure it. Like they have their intention of how do you know, right? How do you know when you're there? How do you know that something's happened? What do you want as a result? One of my favorite stories with manifesting is a client, and this was, before COVID, who drove 3 hours to come see me, wanted to do an in-person session. I sent him the list. He sits down in the chair and I'm like, okay, what do you want? And he's like, I want a Corvette. Anything else on that list? Nope. That's why I've come to see you. I want a Corvette. I was like, and I have to tell you, I had a little judgment because I can do so much for people. And I'm like, really? That's all you want is a Corvette? But then, of course, then my mind, right? Because it's that reality. He's an elementary school teacher. I'm like, okay, what do I need to change for myself so I could show up for him?
Yeah.
And, we did some work. I talked to him about manifesting, what that looked like, asked him a lot of questions and did the work and then said, would you like to work on something else? And he's like, no. And I said, would you like to work on relationships? And he goes, no, I'm good. And I was like, okay, because I'd asked enough questions to know he probably needed a little work on relationships, but he was like, no, thank you. So, a year later, I get an email from him and he's like, I'd like to come in for another session. And I'm like, do you want to do it virtually? No, I would like to drive in. I'm like, all right. So he pulls up, to my office in his Corvette. And I was like, oh, that sounds, like that's amazing. And then he sits down in the chair like he comes office and I'm like, okay, well, what would you like to work on? And he goes, I believe I'd like to work on relationships this time. And I'm like, right on. Okay. And that's the thing. It's like, I had to get out of my way so I could support him and what he knew that Theta Healing could do for him. And he could have that. And what ended up happening, guys, because it's like we think like, like he didn't win like the clearinghouse, sweepstakes. He got hired to work an after school program. Like when he went back home, the school district called him and said, we're in the fall, we're starting this new school program. And it was the exact amount to pay for the Corvette.
And by the way, can we just say that that's how manifesting works? It's very rarely that you win the lottery or these other things. The universe loves to surprise and delight you. And so it's usually always an outward, cool set of circumstances that you couldn't have predicted winds up happening so that you get your thing that you want. But what I think is really cool about your work is that, one, there is a place where people want to be ready for something and he wasn't maybe ready yet for the relationship. So this is what I love about you, because you and I speak at times, and I love that you always honor where people are at. You didn't try to overpower him and go, no, actually, darling, you need to work on your relationships. You just let it unfold for him and did the most work on him that you knew that he could hold at the time, which is one of the things I love about you, because you don't ever try to get in and mingle and wrangle where it's, because you can see, I also know you have the gift of sight and you can see, like, you're scanning somebody's energy system to see what actually does need the work. And so what I love about you is that you respect where they're at and what they're personally ready for so that they can come back, whether it's, and you've had those experiences where they come back a couple of weeks later and say, hey, I didn't think I needed to work on this, but now I want to, or I'm suddenly ready, or whatever that is.
Absolutely.
Right?
I didn't know that there was, like that you could help me with this, and this, even though it was on the list. I told you it could, so it's like, what more can you ask for? And I always say, when people do the intro session, they do one of three things. It's been this way, I've been doing this intro session for at least a decade, if not 12 years. I lose track because I kind of just was like, if I never see someone ever again, what would this session look like? So that I know that I've sent them out in the world. Because this is the deal, guys. And it was when Alysa was talking about, it's not your mind that you need to change.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So when we hear all these things about mindset, okay, well, that's like the hard, arduous road to go. And if that's, again, if that's what you feel like that you need to do, it's your journey. And, there's nothing, but if you want it to be, because just a reminder, we use 11% of our brain. 11%. I
Lucky.
always say with Theta Healing, I think we expand that and we could probably, test like everybody's had Theta Healing and see that they're actually using more of their brain, but not in the way that they did before. But 11% of your brain is actually going to change everything that you need in order to get everything that you want and deserve. Think about it. Cells got a whole lot more of those. They're on board. They've got all of that wisdom. They've got the blocks. Let's change the cells. Because I always tell people, I have 13 different certifications in integrative healing, by the way. So I've done a lot of comparing in the last 29 years. It's been my, self-improvement, growth. That has been always and I've done it the hard way until I discovered Theta Healing, which is why, the heavens parted, the angels sang for me. And I went, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. And it's because if I allow my brain to tell me what's possible, that's when I miss the opportunities. That's when I miss out my creativity. That's when I don't magnetize what it is that would be for my highest and best good. So when you actually bypass the brain, because I've worked with the subconscious, but if your beliefs on a cellular level do not match your subconscious, it's not going to change. And then again, it's that part of that story. Well, that didn't work. Well, I'm telling you why right now, why it didn't work. And when you bypass the brain, because the brain is very limiting, and you change on a cellular level, your heart and your mind will just follow. Things will just, again, we're not avoiding emotions or avoiding things to deal with. We're actually dealing with them at the level that they need to be dealt with. And because what we handle on a daily basis, you can.
Right.
If you're not limiting it with your brain. And that's why Theta Healing works. That's why it's permanent. It's permanent because we deal with the ancestral, we deal with what's happening in this lifetime, we're dealing with that group consciousness. That's what allows it to be permanent. That's what allows us to get to it. And, as I say, when people come in for a session, they just are like, this was so much more than what I thought it could be. There was so much more. And that's why I created that intro session, because it's like, I want to drop the mic every time, every session, and we're done.
Yeah. Well,
Because
that's what
I even had a psychiatrist who, kept me on retainer, and she would look at me and go, do you know how long this would have taken in traditional psychotherapy? Right. Because I don't care why it happened. And I mean that, I say that with love. Let's just change it. Shall we? Can we just let it be different? Can we just, and people don't understand because of your traumas and your non-forgiveness, you are such a victim. And when you can stop being that victim and not just say, oh, I'm going to stop being victim, make the changes, do the cellular work that allows it to instantaneously change, you are in that empowered knowing that magnet for whatever you want, whatever you set your mind to, that's when your mind can work, when everything else is out of the way. The 11% works really well and saying, oh, I want this, and it comes when it's clear.
Yeah.
There's the disclaimer. It's got to be clear.
And Brenda, can I tell on you for a second? Because we haven't really talked about this at all.
Okay. Well, of
You're like,
course.
I don't know what you're gonna say.
Yes. No, I'm kidding. I know it'll be good. It's
So you
Alysa.
guys, so Brenda does these intro sessions, which are amazing. And sometimes you'll just need the one, and sometimes you'll realize, oh, there's other stuff that I've actually can now look at, like the Corvette guy. You can now see it and deal with it. But also, what Brenda hasn't told you is that she works with corporations as well. Because here's what happens at the company level: you are a business owner, you're a 7-figure business owner, and you are trying to do your best to keep everything together with COVID. But now you've got your employees. Now you've got their own sets of traumas and beliefs and all of this stuff that's actually impacting your ability to serve your clients. And you and I recently talked about, this this client, right, who's has an organization who is struggling to serve their clients in the best way, and it's because, even some of their products and services, aren't necessarily able to break through these belief cellular barriers. And so what I love about you is you can actually come in to an organization, especially these like the more like well the healing organizations,
Like
the
wellness centers. I've worked a
yeah,
lot with wellness centers,
you worked with an
organizations where there are teams, where there are people, where there are employees,
yeah, you
people
worked
are
with an
actually running a business.
acupuncturist, like who ran a beautiful wellness center. So all these places where you can come in and not only help the business owner address their trauma stuff that's clogging up their channels, but also work with the teams. And a lot of these places have materials and products that they're putting out to their customers that sometimes also are maybe unconsciously adversely affecting the customer experience. So that's also, I just wanted to say that is part of your big brilliance, is to go in and help to clear all those other streams out for organizations. So you might be the person on an individual level who needs this work, but you might also be the seven-figure business owner who has that more wellness or enlightenment related business, or maybe it's a coaching practice or whatever it is, but you've got a team of people and you know that somehow your clients aren't necessarily getting the results that they could. And you also know that maybe parts of your streams of customer happiness, employee happiness, personal happiness could be cleared up. And so that is also one of your amazing ways that you work with people. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, okay, like that sounded really good, right? Yes. You want to go to tell on me more? No, I'm just kidding. But guys, this is the thing that I will say as well, is that we take for granted our agony, the
Mm-hmm.
difficulties that we have. It just is. Oh, well, it's always been like that. It doesn't have to always be like that. So when you're looking at something, because again, I've been an entrepreneur for 28 years. In 2021 it'll become 29. And I kiddingly, somebody said, oh yeah, I started when I was like 4 as well. And I went, oh, thank you for saying that I'm 30. But anyway, so this is the thing, is that I understand what it takes to run a business and to be an entrepreneur. And I always say that if you want to know, there are two things that I'll say. If you want to know what you still need to work on, either one, go visit your family, or two, start a business,
Yeah.
right?
Or
And
have a child. Don't
right,
forget that one.
right.
Really.
Absolutely. There are these things that just happen and they get to be indicators. And if it's not bringing you joy, right? If it's not, this is why we do things, because we loved it.
Yeah.
Like my sister, actually, she's an amazing gardener. She's a master gardener in several states. She loves to grow things. She can grow things from a seed. She actually ended up managing a garden, and she had to quit because she said it was taking my love of gardening out of me. And I feel like that's what ends up, that's the trade-off that people do, like in their businesses. And like, oh, I have to hold their hands. Like, I have to tell you, I was watching a coaching panel. I'm just gonna, and again, please don't, well, feel about it however you feel about it. And when they were talking about their clients and how they worked with them, I went, oh my God, that sounds so hard. It's honestly, I just want to make people's lives easier. I want you to be able to have the best outcome and the quickest outcome with the least amount of effort. And I just want you to, have some mercy on yourself, get out of your way, and allow yourself to be exactly where you are and what you want to create.
Yeah.
That's it. So whether it's in your business, whether it's in your life, and this technique, you can learn it as well. I teach it. It's a
Yes. Can we
certification.
just talk about that? You certify people in learning this technique, which, by the way, is brilliant. If you are a business owner, if you are a coach, you literally
If you are a parent. I mean, everybody, that's why I became an instructor of this technique, because I'm like, everybody in the world needs to learn this.
yeah, so you can actually get a certification through Brenda, and you do these. I think you're going to do another certification in March. Is that right? Or April? Which?
Absolutely. Yes. In March.
Yeah. So, okay. So, Brenda, how can people get connected with you, if they've been really feeling like, ooh, I need an intro session, like I'm like, ooh, I think I might need an intro session with you.
which I would love. Right. One,
Because even
it's in
people
the
need
post.
the work need the work. Like you heard Brenda, she does the work, she needs the work. No one is exempt from needing the work.
Absolutely. People will say that all the time. As a healer, people have healers, right? As a business owner, people either have coaches or healers or both, right? Because it takes you to a different level. It allows you to show up differently. And that's why I love to teach this. And I always say people do the intro session, they do one of three things. And you don't have to do any of them, right? They refer people, because people will be like, what's different? What's going on here? Want to know about this. Or they want to tell people like, oh my God, you're not gonna believe what happened. Like this, so profound, blah, 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 and this happened as a result. I'm like, great. They want to take the class. If anything, just use the tool for themselves. But oh my gosh, I always say, tell me what you do for a living and I'll tell you how to apply Theta Healing in it.
Mhm.
And it'll make you more money. It'll make your life easier. It'll make your business easier. You'll be happier. I can show you that. Or what else do you offer, Brenda? Like if this can happen in 90 minutes, what else can you do? And that's when I kind of put my sleeves up and go, well, let me tell you. But I have it in the post, it's a chatwithbrendab.com.
Oh,
You
okay,
can
great.
just schedule, a little 30-minute, like I've got some questions. Can you answer this for me? Can you help me? I always have people say that. This is what's going on. Can you help me? Because you know what? If I'm not the person,
Yeah.
I'll let you know who is. If
Mhm.
I don't feel like that I can help you, I will let you know.
Mhm.
I don't say yes, but I'll look at people sometimes. And I even had one guy say to me, I've spent thousands of dollars, thousands. He just kept saying that, thousands. He was very funny. Thousands, Brenda. And that intro session was better than what I spent years and time and money on. He's like, you should charge more. And I'm like, no, it's just an intro session. Again, how do you know you want something until you've had an experience with it and see what all it can do? And then you go from there in that decision as to, so we can talk like a little 30-minute chat. You can tell me what's up, how, if I can help you, what would be possible, how would this work in my business, how would Theta Healing work in my business, what can you do for my business? So I can do a lot. What can I do for you? I can do a lot if you let me, if you say yes, if you just, and again, I hope that you can tell when I keep great company like Alysa, but I'm a lot of fun. I'm kind of funny. I think it's not too painful to talk to me for half an hour. And, I think it's actually kind of fun. If anything, you'll have an experience of having just had a conversation, which is, I think at this time, day and age is important. And just be able to ask some questions. Again, to be able to move forward. I always say knowledge is power. Move forward in an empowered way. This is a decision that I want to make. And although I allow people to make a lot of money, sometimes people are like, well, I'm on a budget. Well, we'll work with your budget. Like, I mean, I have a price, right? But we'll work with your budget. We'll make it, manageable for you. Because I always say, don't let money be the reason that you don't work with me, because people always start making more money.
Right? They always start making more money when they work with
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I can say that. I won't go like this. I'll go like this. That's why I say that, because it's true. 14 years doing this, session in the way that I have, I see it all the time. And whether it's somebody that's super mainstream, don't understand what I do, it doesn't matter, because you quantitatively measure what you have,
Right.
and
And that's
whether it's
about
time, money, weight, whatever it is.
you don't have to understand it. Like, I don't have to understand how to change the oil on my car to take it to Jiffy Lube. I don't.
Right.
I just know that there's people at Jiffy Lube who can take care of that whole oil situation for me. Because
Right.
I don't actually know how to change my oil, quite frankly. So that's why there's a team of experts at Jiffy Lube or the car dealership that can manage that for me. And so you don't have to know how it works. You don't have to know how your car starts to press the button on your car for it to start. You don't have to know the workings. All you have to do, press that button. So if you're ready, press the button.
Well, and if you need like a little baby step before that, come to Wealth Vibe Acceleration Group. Come
Whether you
and
need a
see what
babysitter
it's
or not,
like.
go. Yeah.
Come and have some healing work done.
Yeah.
Come and ask some questions. Bring a friend. If you don't want to come by yourself, just come. You
Yeah.
know, again, I always say I'm pretty laid back, Chica, as far as that. And I don't want anybody to do anything that they don't want to do, but you don't know it. If you don't say yes, you won't know.
That's right.
So
All right. What else should we tell the people before we wrap up? Or do you want to give any uh
this is
insights?
the thing. If anything, come to my group because we did the most amazing reset
Yeah,
and clearing
you did.
for
The most
2020. I mean, again, it wasn't just me, so I'm not just bragging on me, but it's my facilitators who are absolutely amazing in our program, and it was great. So if you're just kind of wanting to start off your year in a different way, come and join the group and come listen to that. It's pinned in the announcements. It'll be easy to find.
yeah.
And you'll get an experience of like, wow, this is what is possible. So come join the group or, answer the link or message me through Facebook. But if we're not friends, just know it'll go to spam and hopefully I'll see it. But chat with Brenda B is the best way to be able to do it. And of course, I have my linked tree link so you can find me, I'm everywhere, right? And I have a YouTube channel, the Theta Healing Power Hour, that you can see past co-lives like this, but we usually end with work. We do some Theta Healing work at the end.
Yeah. Should we do a little
So
fading
I
at
was
the end?
like, I kind of feel like we ought to do a little, but I want you to get so much more. That's why I want you to come to the group
Okay, come
and
to
do
the
the
group, you guys.
2020.
Hashtag us replay here. Share this with your friends. Thanks for being here. Wish you guys a super amazing, amazing 2021. Remember, just to give you one more reason to join the group, we do have some powerful and strong energetics that are going to be happening this year. It's a Universal 5 year. It's all about rapid change, transformation, and freedom. And sometimes that means the opposite. You don't hold the coin without holding both sides at once. So if you're feeling right now like you could use a little boost, a little reset, a little fresh light, fresh new energy, join the group. We'd love to see you
Right.
there.
If you want to be different, because that's like I said, if 2020 is done, it caught us off guard, but I promise you we're going in, nothing's changed much, but you can be different in it and you can show up differently. And if you don't want to have to do it the long, hard, arduous way, if you'd like for it to happen with ease and grace, if you want it to not be about you, right? Like I don't want to have to come up with a solution every single time, right?
Mhm.
Join the group.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
We'll see you there.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. And so, just a reminder every Wednesday, normally I'm doing the interviewing, and then we do some theta healing work at the end. That's how the Theta Power Hour works. It's every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And next week, we're having Donna Ashton, and she actually helps people get their programs together. So if you've created a concept, you have something, she gets it into a course for you so that you can share it with people, right? So you can sell it. So she will be here next week, and that's who we're having. And again, it's go to my YouTube channel. I have interviewed some amazing people, starting off with Miss Alysa. I interviewed Miss Alysa. She was my first interview when I first started doing this. It feels like ages ago, but I don't know. It's been a while. So there's a lot, and you'll always get some work. You'll always get some good information, and you'll always get some work. And the big thing that I wanted Alysa to address, which we kind of threw at the end, if it's not me, if it's not Theta Healing, get some support in some way. Because again, let's allow things to unfold for the good and feeling good versus, like Alysa said, it could be the other side of the coin. And don't allow that to keep happening for you. So
Beautiful. All right.
thank you guys.
Having me. Thank you guys. We love you so, so much. See you in the group.
Absolutely.